In terms of main challenges, I would say the first one, is definitely like finding a suitable location. I guess actually before that, it's just kind of picking an area that you do want to be located in. And I think at least for us, I understand for every business might be a little bit different, but for us at least, the three main factors that we kind of were looking at, one was just where our current customer base were already located in terms of like, not in Castle Hill or, which other suburbs were located. And secondly, was just like which areas, I guess, demographically contained parents and students who were likely to kind of use our services. And then the third thing was just staffing. So I guess the way we approached it was just, if we were to start with the location, what are all the different things that would cause us to, crash and burn and not do well. You don't get enough students, when you start up, you don't get enough, existing kids moving over, or you just don't have enough staff to like run the show. So yeah, we kind of use those sort of factors to just decide where we wanted to go.
Hi, and welcome to the Entrepreneur Organization Business Podcast. I'm your host, Lynn Peretti. Now, my guest today is Christopher Chen, a new member of EO Sydney, who is the founder of Alpha One Coaching College, which was started in 2015. Now, within 7 years, he has expanded his business to 4 locations, serving close to 3,000 students across Sydney and employing over 100 tutors. Now, frustrated with the education quality at various opportunity classes and selective coaching colleges, Christopher gathered a team of experienced tutors and designed courses that focus on teaching the best methods to tackle questions in the OC and selective test. Now, in today's episode, though, you're going to learn exactly how Christopher was able to expand to multiple locations. You get to learn about the challenges that he faced and then the method that he took to scale his business successfully. Now, if you have a location-based style of business and you're looking to expand, this is an episode not to be missed. Now, let's join me in welcoming Christopher. Well, so good to have you here, Christopher. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Lynn.
Yeah, so Chris is actually a new member of EO Sydney, and I had the fortune to have a catch up with Chris, and it was really interesting to learn a lot about your business, which is like a physical business compared to my kind of online business that I feel like I get a lot of advantage and I guess, there's some struggle that I can avoid. So I wanted the audience today to really learn about some of the struggles you have in running a physical business. But before we do that, do you want to introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Chris. I'm 25 years old and I was born and raised in Sydney. So the business that I run is Alpha One Coaching College, which, as you mentioned, it's a physical location-based sort of business. What we mainly provide is mainly a mixture of classes for kids who are doing academically well and just want to kind of push ahead and also prepare for certain exams. But we also do sell things like textbooks as well as online courses. So we started off back in 2017 in Castle Hill, out west in the hills area. And since then, we've expanded to other areas such as Bella Vista, Parramatta, Epping, Burwood, as well as a smaller sort of online stream branch. So, and at the moment, we're kind of in a position where every school term, we have a few thousand enrollments and around 50 full-time equivalent of staff. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, I just want to understand. So, when about over 10 years ago, I wanted to start a business and straight away I was like, I want to start something online. Like, I don't want to have physical spaces. And considering you're a lot younger than me and you kind of started the business in this day and age, what made you decide to start a business that is kind of a lot more physical and, there's buildings and things rather than something more convenient like digital nomad that most people want to do nowadays?
Yeah, I think mainly it's just because at the time, before I'd started, I was just involved in the education sector as well, mainly just as a tutor myself. So I kind of understood that sort of market and what parents and students were after. So it was just mainly a situation where the demand for physical face-to-face classes was just significantly more than online. So I think that was probably a pretty easy choice for me to make. It was just purely based on what the market wanted.
Gotcha. So it was just one of those things where you have the experience in, the skills in, and then it's a type of service that people want in person rather than online. So you kind of didn't get to choose that path. Whereas I think for me, it's like I didn't know what business to start, and so I got a kind of a blank canvas. It's like, well, I want to start something online. So let's talk about your type of service. When you first started out, did you have a vision to did you know you're going to start multiple locations? Like, what was your vision in business at the beginning?
To be honest, I think at the beginning it was I didn't even have, I guess, the vision of like it becoming a proper business. To be honest, at the time I was just studying at university. So I was doing a Bachelor of Medicine, Bachelor of Surgery. So that was kind of the career path that I had I actually envisioned. But I think as I was building the business, I kind of enjoyed it quite a lot, and just the whole aspect of, planning and, all the, strategy and executing, all those sort of things that come with business, juggling all those different roles. So I enjoyed quite a bit. So I think over time, as time passed, I think the vision just slowly became clearer and clearer, where I was like, I do want to, have a serious shot at this and what I'm doing with this business. And I think at a certain point in time, when the demand at one particular location became quite large, and there was that sort of kind of that scope to open up several more locations, I think that's when that part of the vision became clear. So I guess to answer your question at the start, definitely not. But I think as time passed, that vision grew. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you grow? I mean, like, was it just a natural word of mouth that students started referring? Like, how did you grow so fast? And then how did all of a sudden you have people from different locations wanting to to use your service?
Yeah, so I guess in the tutoring space, obviously there is that we sell online course and textbooks, but mainly the bulk of what we do, which is classes, that is just a predominantly just word of mouth sort of type of business. And I think if you're in that sort of area and you do a fairly good job at it, I think the kind of word spreads quite quickly. So I think, we had our, traditional sort of like marketing, social media and all those sort of different things, flyers and things like that. But I think by far it's just the word of mouth. It started off slow, but then I think it got to I would say around 2021. I think the fact that COVID happened kind of allowed us to kind of adapt and sort of try to, I guess, adjust as well as we could. And I think we, honestly speaking, probably did a better job overall looking across the markets. That kind of accelerated the growth a bit more, but it was kind of like a snowball effect. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, talk about COVID. Did it affect your business at all since you started off as physical? Did you have to go online during that time?
Yeah, so I completely had to shift to online completely for that period of, I think, up to a year, where it was just like an overnight shift of everything was physical, and then we had to kind of flip it all online, and that was quite a big sort of task. I think at the time it was just we decided that we just wanted to preserve. So I guess one of the main differentiating factors for what we do is we just run the class in a lot smaller sort of groups of around 7-8 kids, whereas a lot of the other competitors are running groups in about 30, 25, 40 sort of classroom sizes. So I think when we went to online, like through Zoom, those sort of classes, I think the smaller classes were a lot more conducive to that sort of online learning, whereas in the larger group, it gets a bit difficult to have 40 kids all trying to speak at the same time. So I think that kind of accelerated that growth sort of thing. So, but yeah, that's kind of what we did during that period.
Okay, so how long did you stick with just one location, and when did you decide to do the second? What were you feeling when it came down to okay, we got to do another location? What were some of the challenges that you faced?
Yeah, definitely. So I would say the second location started around 2019, towards the end of 2019.
And that a year or 2 years after?
About 2 years, I would say 2.5 years. Yeah, so we started thinking about it about 2 years after the company had started, and I think it really just materialized towards the end of that second year. I think mainly it was the size of the company had kind of grown to a certain point where it was like, okay, we're getting interest from other areas within Sydney, and then we had some people within the team who were quite excited to get a bit more involved than just day-to-day sort of employee I guess work arrangement. So they were quite interested in kind of helping expansion and being more involved. So I guess those two factors were the main, I guess, initiating things that kind of led us down that path. But yeah, when we kind of decided to do that, I think that's when we really started looking into the logistics of things. And I think that's where all the different challenges start coming up, and, get presented, and, you have to kind of deal with those sort of challenges. So I think in terms of main challenges, I would say the first one is definitely finding a suitable location. I guess actually before that, it's just kind of picking an area that you do want to be located in. And I think for at least for us, I understand for every business might be a little bit different, but for us at least, the three main factors that we kind of were looking at. One was just where our current customer base were already located in terms of like, not in Castle Hill or, which other suburbs were located. And secondly, was just like which areas, I guess, demographically contained parents and students who were likely to kind of use our services. And then the third thing was just staffing. So I guess the way we approached it was just, if we were to start at the location, what are all the different things that would cause us to, crash and burn and not do well. You don't get enough students, when you start up, you don't get enough, existing kids moving over, or you just don't have enough staff to like run the show. So yeah, we kind of use those sort of factors to just decide where we wanted to go. And once we sort of decided, hey, like Parramatta or Epping or something like that, then we'd look at things like the actual location itself. Like I guess in our space, we need outside of hours access, somewhere where there's plenty of parking, like something that's, a relatively safe area. Those are sort of factors. And just kind of like, we just had like a list of all the factors that we wanted and just went around visiting locations and just like check, and just see which ones, no, this one doesn't work because of this. And just kind of, that was the whole process. Yeah.
Gotcha. So you obviously probably had students in there who lived a little bit further away and they were traveling there. And then eventually when you maybe opened up the newer location, did some of the students move there and, like they end up changing location? And then and I guess my question is like, did you have a wait list knowing that, yep, we've got a bunch of students that's ready to go to this location? Or you kind of like had faith in like, okay, we're going to do this and then hopefully we're going to get more signups for that new location?
And then there was a lot more like, I guess, like planning and trying to, like, I think the way I approached it was just, I try to minimize the fate and the variability as much as I could. So definitely a big part of it was because when we were in Castle Hill, we had a lot of parents traveling really far. So we had some parents like traveling up from like Bondi, Manly, driving like an hour down, and then people from Epping, Parramatta, and then but like because I was quite involved with the customer facing thing, I got a sense of where people were coming from. At the time I started, I didn't really keep good data, and I think it would have been so much easier if I just had information on where everyone was located. So I didn't have that, unfortunately. So a lot of it was just based on anecdotal sort of like experience and like, oh, I know a lot of people were saying they're coming from Parramatta. So I guess that was a big factor of why we started in Parramatta first. And then when we decided that, okay, we're going to run it, we found our location, we're going to start in October. At that point in time, we kind of announced it to the existing customers, and then and as well as our social media channels and website and things like that. And then we kind of try to collect a sort of like a wait list or like an interest list, and then we just have a list of all the people who were happy to kind of move or enroll over there because now it was close to their home. And then the other thing we tried to do was some of the key because I think a big aspect of our sort of like business is that like the parents and the kids kind of, once they're happy with one of the tutors, teachers, want to stick with them. So that's one of the other challenges, which was like trying to get people to kind of go to another location if their like tutor or teacher wasn't moving along with them. So that was a challenge. So what we would do is like, once we had the list, we'd then kind of map out who were the like teachers who were teaching those kids. And then if there were like, I think at the time we identified, I think 2 or 3 teachers who kind of were teaching a large majority of those kids. And then we had them kind of move over as well to kind of make the transition as easy as possible and as low risk as possible. So yeah, that's so
interesting. It is, yeah, because you're gonna juggle. It's just the convenience of the distance, and it's the teachers that people are like the kids are attached to. So really interesting. So from that second location, was it a lot easier when you started rolling out the other 2 or 3 locations? And how long did it take for you to roll out the next few locations?
Yeah, so we started Parramatta in 2019, and then the other location, so the Bella Vista location was more of a relocation of the Castle Hill Centre because we just needed a larger space. So we had like a 5-10 minute drive away. And then Epping and Burwood started at the beginning of 2022. So I would say that was about 2.5 years after Parramatta has started. But I think those ones, when we started, it was very much like, I guess the way that we've expanded is always just if there was a suitable individual to kind of fuel that expansion. We didn't really have pressure of like, let's try to hit these sort of targets of expansion in this center by this day. It's just more of like if we had someone who was interested in, we felt was suitable for that sort of expansion, become like the face of that branch and manager and all that sort of thing, then that would kind of like happen. So Burwood and Epping kind of opened both at the start of 2022, and the online branch was more just remnants of the whole COVID era.
Okay, so it sounds like you've had some almost like entrepreneurs, some people that are not just great at their job, but then they've got the passion to maybe expand. So are they now your business partners, or are they still just a key senior manager that you've kind of deploy
Yeah.
to that area? Yeah.
So they're like business partners. So they're like kind of business partners at that particular location. So like each location, we just approached it as like a new sort of venture, and we kind of went into it together. So like each sort of location just has its sort of different sort of individuals who we kind of I partnered with them, and they were all people who were at the company previously, certain roles, either like administration, management, or like teaching, and they were quite like reliable, good staff who were interested in kind of growing, their sort of role, and kind of went down.
Yeah. So in a way, it's like you're franchising, but without, you didn't go down the franchise route, but you basically found the amazing employees that turn into your co-founders for the different locations. Is that right?
Correct, exactly right. Yeah, it's kind of like, it's not really franchising, but kind of like it's kind of like somewhere in the middle there between the two.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct.
And did you look into franchising? Like, what were some of those options that you were exploring when you were thinking about expansion? I know if I was in your shoe and I'm like, oh my God, I can see this opportunity, but you're so kind of overwhelmed by which way to go, one way is franchise, one way is not. Like, what were some of the things you tossed up with?
I think for me, a lot of the decisions I kind of made were just like, I think I never really kind of had expansion as like the number one sort of priority, as that's a metric in terms of how I like success, and like if I like I didn't really have any targets of I need to have this many branches by this year. I think mainly it was the main motivation was just like I'm keen to sort of expand to the locations, but I do want to expand having the confidence that those locations will be run well and like something I'm like proud of essentially. So I think like in terms of exploring, I think the franchise route, I did kind of explore a little bit, like sort of like there was some people, a decent number of people interested in like franchising, and I would speak to them, and like it was just sort of like a mixture of like some other people who I guess they were more kind of interested in just more like, it's more like investment. So they were like kind of trying to invest money, bring in staff and kind of run it. But then there's like a lot of like kind of cheering out there, which is kind of that sort of model. So it's like less kind of hands-on. So I think it's for me, maybe part sort of like fear that it wouldn't be like kind of run like exactly by someone who like kind of was kind of within the company and kind of knew things inside out. I think partly I'm like, yeah, I felt like it would be run better by someone who kind of knew it, but I think it was just kind of a combination of that. So I did explore a little bit like franchising, but ultimately didn't really pursue that.
Yeah, I really like your model because I feel like you learn, you know this person can do the job. They've got skin in the game. They're not just here to kind of, sometimes people get into franchise thinking that, oh, I'll just throw my money in and hopefully this machine will make me money, versus someone that's kind of grown from the inside out. So what would you say the qualities were of these partners that you found? Like what's made you stand out? Or like what make them stand out?
Yeah, I think a couple main factors. I think firstly, just the given such as like knowledge, and they're able to kind of like, they understand like, like how to teach, how the whole system with, the different exams that we prepare for, and like this, the New South Wales schooling system, they have a pretty good understanding of that. So I think knowledge was a factor that was important. I think secondly, just reliability, because I think once you do open up your own branch, a lot of the times in the early days, it's just you, and a lot of the things do kind of fall on your shoulders. So I think they definitely did need to be people who were quite reliable and kind of display that quality and trait their like roles as tutors, managers, admin. And I think just that ambition, to kind of do something beyond just something that was just like I work this many hours and earn this much sort of intentions. So I think those three were probably the main factors, and I think everything else, like managerial skills, people skills, or like for people who are transitioning from as a tutor to like a partner, like those sort of things, kind of we just kind of figured out on the way.
Yeah. Okay, so help me understand, like what would be your role? Let's say you decided to expand in the next location. You've got the perfect person to do it. Yeah, what is your role versus their role, and how do you spend your time now that you've got so many branches?
Yeah, so I guess with opening a new branch, I think how I would what the tasks that I'd mainly occupy myself with were just the existing business or systems, hiring, and like how the operations, like how they're running at one of the locations, it's kind of like my role would mainly be just moving that over, ensuring like a smooth transition of that to the new location. Because although those partners are quite experienced, like it's just, just based on, because I've been here longer, it's just, there's a deeper understanding of how things work. So it's just ensuring that smooth transition. And then they're mainly focused on the implementation on the day-to-day day-to-day implementation of those sort of things, and making sure that the team over at that new location are kind of like operating how the company should be operating. So I think that's like kind of the early kind of stages of the business. And then beyond that, then it becomes a lot more of just like, how do we grow the business, and, how do we make things run more smoothly? What more value can we bring to the sort of the customers and sort of things? And the shift kind of focus a little bit to that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so with all the branches and obviously with different partners there, do you then come together sometimes as a group and brainstorm and how different branches are happening? And because I would say that each branch is kind of responsible for, trying to grow it and get more customers. And do you share that knowledge pool?
Yeah, so I would have like quarterly sort of like larger meetings between all the partners across the different branches. But we do have smaller like monthly meetings just for like that particular branch, because depending on the size of the branch, the sort of issues that they face and the goals that they have are quite different. So a branch with, say, 1,000 students compared to a branch with, say, 200 students would have very different sort of issues that need to be like kind of addressed, or like, yeah. So like we'll have smaller meetings, which is just branch specific, where we can just talk about the specific things we want to do for that branch. But then we do have less frequent, like sort of larger meetings to just kind of discuss like big sort of like long-term sort of things.
Really interesting. I just want you to, I guess, look back and go, okay, what are some of the things that I wish I knew earlier, or some tips that you would be able to give to someone thinking about, okay, well, yeah, I am maxing out now, I'm thinking about expanding. Yeah, what are some of the things that they can do to avoid making mistakes?
Yeah, I think one of it was definitely like delegation. I think just based on my personality, I tend to try to do all the things myself and just make sure it gets done in the way that I can kind of, I envision it to be done. But then obviously to a certain degree, that sort of limits the number of things that you can do. And I think for a lot of things, whether it was like, teaching classes myself to like, doing, administration tasks, like, emails, phone calls myself, to, managing, that shift myself. I think at each step of the way, I probably stayed in that role maybe several months more than I should have, because there were, other things within the business that kind of needed my attention, that were more kind of higher level and like a higher level and crucial tasks that, not someone else couldn't really do because of the nature of the task. But I kind of sacrificed that to a certain extent, or didn't pay as much attention because I had my time taken up by things that I probably should have kind of let go a bit sooner.
Okay. And so what would you spend your time on? Like, what do you know that you should be doing as a leader, and where you're at in the company right now?
Yeah, so I think the two main things that I spend most of my time doing now, like first is just like change and improvements. So as we kind of evaluate the company and say, these are the things that we want to improve upon, and these are the things we want to introduce, I'll spend a lot of my time sort of kind of spearheading and kind of moving that sort of project along, if it's like a larger sort of project, and just making sure it gets implemented well. So that's one thing. And then I think the second thing that I'll spend a lot of time on is just more those high level sort of like difficult sort of situations, like say, this branch is facing this sort of difficult sort of situation. How do we want to address it? And like just coordinating like a strategy to address that problem or issue.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so what's on the horizon? Are you expanding soon? Is there another location coming up?
At the moment, nothing like, I haven't got any places like kind of like planned as of yet, and nothing sort of like right there. But I think it's just like, I think it's always on the cards, and something that I think the way I approach it, I've been pretty happy with, where it's very, I guess, like people focused. So I think we pretty much follow that model, and if more people come along that we're confident with and like happy to share the journey with, I think that's definitely like expansion is part of.
Yeah, I really love the way you've approached business. It's like you're kind of really organically allowing your business to grow. And because sometimes in business, we get caught up in these big, audacious goals and try to expand and make as much money. And I feel like I really resonate with your style of really just taking one day at a time and kind of solving the problem as is. Like when there's more student, you want to expand. And when there's a teacher that comes along that makes sense, and then you do it. And so, yeah, I mean, any insight into the way you approach it? Like, was it just something that you knew inside, or you observed on the outside and said, yeah, I don't want it to be that kind of style entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think it's both. I think personality wise, I think it's just I guess who I am. As in, I feel like I think the money aspect of things means a lot less to me than just I guess the thing that I'm doing. I just want it to like run well, and something that when people look at, they're like, that's a good company, or something that I look at, I'm like proud of that I've kind of created. So I think for me, because that kind of sits much higher on the, I guess, priority sort of ladder, and I guess like pure financials kind of falls low on that sort of like, that sort of priority list. I think that kind of has kind of resulted in that sort of.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I resonate with that as well. As I would say, your parents probably love you because you're the typical Asian child. People want, like most of us Asian parents want the kids to be academically smart. Not only are you academically smart, now you're making other kids academically smart. So what have your parents, what have they been thinking or saying since you've been in this business journey of yours?
Like they're pretty like, how do I say it? Like there's not that much pressure. Like I would say that I know for a lot of like Asian parents, they typically there's a lot of like, you got to do this. But then for me, they've been pretty hands off, and just like if like I wanted to kind of go down one path, they were pretty happy with it. So, like like midway through like medical school, I was like, I don't really want to do this anymore. I'm pretty keen on just like going down business path. So I guess for a lot of Asian parents are quite like, no, you're gonna stay with your career and all that sort of thing. It's a good career. But for my parents, they're just like, yeah, okay, sure. Like if you want to do that, that's fine. So like they're quite supportive, and
That's good.
yeah. So like,
Yeah, I must be so proud because you're really helping the next generation of kids to grow up smart like yourself. Whereas for me, I think for many years I was working online, and my parents still like, what do you do again? It's like you're people. I have no idea what you're doing. Well, this takes me to the last question I usually like to ask is, I guess like, what do you want the world to remember Chris for?
yeah, I think the main thing that I guess I'd like the world to remember me by is I think someone who just achieved, I think, all his ambitions in life, and kind of reached, I guess I reached my full potential, and then along that journey managed to help quite a few people along the way, and made a positive impact. So I think those two things, just making a positive impact and just achieving my full potential, I guess. Yeah.
Beautiful. And I was like lucky to meet so many amazing people like yourself in EO Sydney. I think we all kind of have similar core values, so that's amazing. I'm going to make sure that everyone gets your contact details in the description below, where they can find you on LinkedIn and your company website, etc. So thank you so much, Chris, for your time today.
No problem. Thank you so much, Lynn.